Hello and welcome to Backlisted, the podcast which gives new life to old books. And the book featured on today's show is The Corner That Held Them by Sylvia Townsend Warner, first published in 1948 by Chatto and Windus in the UK and Viking Press in America. I'm Andy Miller, author of The Year of Reading Dangerously and Inventory, an unreliable guide to my record collection.
I'm Dr. Una McCormack, science fiction author and Associate Fellow of Homerton College, Cambridge.
And I'm Nicky Birch, the producer of Backlisted. I'm here to give you the info. This podcast has been running for 10 years now, and in that time, we have built up an incredible community of listeners, patrons, and guests, plus, of course, a back catalogue of nearly 250 shows, covering everything from Moby Dick to Moomin Valley in November. There's one really easy free way to support the podcast and to listen to episodes from our backlist. You just follow Backlisted on whatever podcast app you use. You can explore the back catalogue. You'll get the new episodes dropped into your feed as soon as they're published. Plus, it really helps us get surfaced in charts and makes the shows more visible.
Yeah, that's visible surfaced drops, everybody.
That's what I'm here for.
That's how they talk in podcast land.
That's right.
Nicky, if a drop gets surfaced in a chart without anyone being able to see it, can it really be said to have dropped?
Well, I think it will be a drop in the ocean of the many podcasts that exist in the podcast sphere. And
what Nicky is trying to ask you, listeners, is please subscribe.
Please subscribe.
Enough of this technical banter, I think. Joining us today on the show to discuss The Corner That Held Them is an old friend of the podcast, Tanya Kirk. Hello, Tanya.
Hello.
Hello. Tanya Kirk is the librarian and a fellow of St John's College, Cambridge. She's co-author and co-editor of Realms of Imagination, Essays from the Wide Worlds of Fantasy, and has edited 5 collections of classic ghost stories for the British Library's publishing arm, including Chill Tidings and The Haunted Library. Also, Tanya can say she's worked as Shakespeare's editor on a facsimile edition of the first folio. Tanya, did you offer him any notes, any editorial suggestions?
He didn't take them well, so I won't try that again.
More evidence that he's probably the Earl of Oxford in that case.
Exactly, you put him on the spot there, Tanya.
Yeah. Didn't take it well, too posh. Tanya previously joined us on episode 158, Winifred Holtby's South Riding, and episode 177, Ballet Shoes by Noel Streatfeild. Coincidentally, I also appeared on those episodes.
Yay. Oh, yes, of course.
How did that happen?
Yes.
The band are back together.
I know. With another excellent, very excellent book. Tanya, you've still a little way to go before you challenge either me or Andrew Mail as most invited guests. But the comeback starts here.
I love that Una is trying to get some kind of grudge match going with Andrew.
Poor Andrew. Tanya, how's your leg? You've not been too well, have you?
I have had a very weird year. So I left I used to work for the British Library. I left there last summer and I started at St John's and I was loving it. And then 10 weeks in, I fell over and shattered my shin into several pieces. And 25 days in Addenbrooke, 6 hours of surgery later,
God.
And a month in a wheelchair. It's not been fun times.
Would you call yourself fully mobile now?
I'd say I was mostly fully mobile. It's the bone's still not totally healed, but I've got eight pieces of titanium now that hold it all together. So I will be setting off airport security for the rest of my life.
When you were reading this book, did you think to yourself, well, things could have been worse. I could have been a nun
yes.
in East Anglia. Had this happened, it wouldn't have been good news for Tanya.
Yeah.
If you were a nun, they just would have killed you off, wouldn't they? They didn't care.
Which, to be fair, Nicky, is a bit like the guest process on this podcast. So anyway, The Corner That Held Them. Let's talk about that. The Corner That Held Them is a historical novel that details the lives of the residents of Oby, a medieval convent in the fenlands of East Anglia. The novel starts with Oby's establishment in 1163 and stops, and I'm using that word deliberately, it stops 300 pages later rather than ends in 1382. I dare say we'll discuss why that might be in due course. The novel is built around a series of episodic incidents concerning the residents of the convent, not just nuns, of course, but also cooks, bishops, lepers, paupers, sages, and conmen. One theme of the novel is how social conditions result from economic circumstance. Sylvia Townsend Warner herself described it as a novel written on, quote, the purest Marxist principles. And I'm thrilled to be able to report that this may well be the most entertaining novel ever written, largely to have dispensed with anything so bourgeois as a plot.
The corner that held them was Sylvia Townsend. Do you know, it's quite a mouthful saying Sylvia Townsend Warner. Can we just call her Sylvia?
No.
Okay, all right.
No,
then.
I don't like that.
Do you not too chummy? Yeah.
Warner.
Townsend Warner.
She's filed in bookshops under W. So
Is she?
Yeah.
We
That's
have an
good to know.
adjudication here, I think.
I don't like it when there's a documentary about the Venerable Bede and they start referring to him as Ven or something.
My buddy Bede.
Does that ever happen, Andy?
Yeah, oh, you know what I mean. Or Henry VIII. Henry was feeling sad.
Harry.
Because, I don't like that. It's too familiar.
All right then.
Ms. Townsend Warner to
me.
you.
Yeah. As long as she calls me Dr. McCormack.
Do your best.
Yeah.
The corner that held them was Sylvia Townsend Warner's sixth novel, following on from Lolly Willowes, a bestseller in 1926, and then Mr. Fortune's Maggot, The True Heart, Summer Will Show, and After the Death of Don Juan. It took her 6 years to write, beginning in 1942, and it can be seen to reflect some of her experiences on the home front and those of her partner, the poet Valentine Ackland, during the Second World War. It was her favourite of her own novels, and a bit like The Convent of Obi itself, it seems over the years to have taken on a life of its own. It's been reissued by Virago Modern Classics, then Penguin, and now NYRB Classics. The novelist Sarah Waters has called it one of the great British novels of the 20th century, a narrative of extraordinary reach, power, and beauty. And just a few months ago in The Times, critic James Marriott declared it one of the best historical novels he'd ever read, if not the best.
Now, I know many listeners will be listening to this saying to themselves, hang on, Backlisted did a show on Sylvia Townsend Warner 9 years ago. It was episode 8, Lolly Willowes, and it went out in March 2016. What is going on? This is chaos. And they'll be cancelling their subscriptions faster than Nicky can beg for them.
Well, when we come back, we'll explain just why and how we came to pick the corner that held them for today's show. But first, let's hear from our sponsors.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by PetSmart. Stop by for Yappy Hour with your pet at PetSmart. Save $5 on walk-in grooming services like nail trims, ear cleaning, brushing, and more. No appointment needed every weekday from 2 to 6 p.m. And while you're there, Yappy Hour includes exclusive in-store deals like 25% off pet toys. Visit services.petsmart.com/grooming to learn more.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
Welcome back. Now, as regular listeners will be aware, we usually kick things off by asking our guest when they first read the book under discussion. But in this case, Tanya, I happen to know it was this week.
Shush. No one's supposed to know.
Shh. I know it's the teaching law, isn't it? You only need to be
Exactly.
an hour ahead of your students. So that's exactly. So, Andy, I'm going to turn to you instead and ask, when did you first read The Corner That Held Them by Sylvia Townsend Warner?
Thank you, Una. Well, I remember where I was. It was in the run-up to episode 8 of Backlisted in March 2016 on Lolly Willowes. And can I just say, Tanya, very well done for reading The Corner That Held Them nearly as fast as Una did.
Impossible.
Yeah, I
You
know,
actually read.
impossible.
I listened back to that episode, Andy. You said you read 2 of her books as well. What was the other book you read at the same time?
After the death of Don Juan and The Corner
Right.
That Held Them and Lolly Willowes.
Those were the days.
Those were the days when I used to read as much as I could before an episode, right?
I read the Claire Harmon biography as well, so just putting that.
Hey,
Hey,
it's we're all putting the hours in.
We're old friends. It's fine. It's fine.
But
Just to say, it's a good episode, though.
It is.
Episode 8. If you want to have a double bill, this one and that one would be good back to back, wouldn't
All
they?
right. Well, look, over the years, I've always said that my favourite book that I've ever read for Backlisted that we never actually done an episode on is The Corner That Held Them by Sylvia Townsend Warner. And because we're in our 10th anniversary year, I just thought it would be fun to make a show with our friends about this book, which I think, like James Marriott, I think this is one of the best, if not the best, historical novel I've ever read. I made the time to reread it about 5 years ago, and I read it again for this. So I've read this book now 3 times in 10 years. I just think it's so wonderful. It's such a pleasure for me to have the opportunity to discuss it all with you. But I'd also like to say that I want to note something. So we made that episode, Nicky. You weren't here then. We made that
No, I
episode
wasn't.
in early 2016. And Lolly Willowes, as I'm sure many people will know, is a novel about a witch. And I couldn't help noticing that of the original Backlisted team, I am currently the last man standing. Not person, man. Surely not a coincidence. And it began to occur to me that was that show from 10 years ago some kind of hex induction hour? and that, in fact, the shade of Lolly Willowes had in some way cursed the show, and that the way to put that right is to placate the goddess by making a show with a female guest, a female co-host, a female producer on a book written by a woman on the subject of nuns.
does this make you Nicky's familiar now, Andy? Or
I don't know. I wouldn't like to say that for fear of bringing down more retribution. So I have read this several times, and therefore I will sit back now and listen to 3 people who hadn't read it before tell me if they enjoyed it or not. Let's just begin with you, Tanya. Did you enjoy this novel?
I will say I enjoyed it very much, but it took me quite a long time to understand what I was reading, because I didn't know anything about it before reading it. And I spent the first sort of 100 pages being like, where is the plot? When is the plot happening? And then once I realized that there was no plot, I enjoyed it very much. It's the wonderful minutiae that make it really special. You don't need the plot. You just kind of get swept along like the river.
It's the most entertaining novel with no plot ever written. I think it's an absolute page turner, and part of the magic of it is I would struggle to tell you why, apart from the sheer pleasure afforded by the way she doesn't tell you a story.
you just get a deep pleasure in what I call their doings. Yeah, the things that they are doing. You just become very absorbed in it. You become in the minutiae of the gossip, of the sort of tiny feuds that are going on. Which minor aristocratic family is sort of got got a little bit ahead in the politics of the convent. You get tremendously absorbed in it, and then in the background there's just like stuff going on, like another
the Black Death,
peasants' revolts. I don't know, some bit of
What else?
the 100 Years' War. That's all going on, and occasionally they go, "Oh, the duck pond's looking a bit mossy. We probably ought to do something about that." And I'd read it in like a day and a half. I just sat down, and I always have a little crib first, so I knew there wasn't a plot, and I thought, oh, lovely, I won't have to pay any attention to stuff happening and work out what's going on. So it was like sitting with these women, just spring, plague, rent, and it all comes round again and again and again.
It occurred to me, Nicky, that reading it again this time, that it does have a 21st century equivalent, which is a bit like a workplace novel.
I completely agree, actually. The other novel that I thought
It's like
of.
people falling out or bitching behind one another's backs or getting on with the boring stuff of the office,
Yep.
i.e. the convent.
It reminds me of the Joshua Ferris novel, Then We Came to the End.
Ah,
Yeah.
yes,
That
I love that.
ebb and flow
Yes.
of people. And people just leave and then don't come back. And that's like being at work, isn't it? Oh, they've gone. I was very involved in their life. And now they've quit. And bye.
Now they've dropped dead of palsy.
Yes.
Nicky, what did you make of this?
I think a bit like Tanya. I think I felt really kind of, okay, where's this going? It's set in to be clear, it's set in a nunnery, but over quite a long period of time. So the characters just sort of come and then they die, and then new nuns come, and then then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, we're with a whole new set of people, and it just sort of has this pace between people coming and going, and you're sort of still with the nunnery, aren't you? You're still in Obi, and that nun's dead, and those ones have died of the plague, and those, it's like, okay, but the next lot are coming, and they're still worrying about the same thing, which is the bureaucracy and the sort of petty, as Una
Money.
said, the petty squabbles and the money, of course, and how much wine they can drink. They do like to drink, don't they?
Marxist principles.
You listened to it, or
I did listen to it.
Hey,
Yeah.
Did that make it harder to follow? Because I kept having to look back at which one is Dame Adela, which one is Dame Philippa.
Yeah, because you don't tend to do that when you listen, but at the same time, actually, I think you don't have to, not having to follow a plot particularly makes listening quite kind of pleasant. Because
Yeah.
you just listen, and what happens is you get really brought into the words. So the words come up much more because it's the words, the language they repeat a lot of language, and she's got this amazing use of words, which I'm sure we'll go into. But so you just get used to these things that, the words pestilence comes up quite a lot.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean?
Also, but Nick, it is a very good audiobook. I did some
it's
of
a
it on
brilliant
audio this
audiobook.
time. I
Yeah.
really recommend it. It's excellent.
Who's the reader?
Yeah.
Who's reading?
It's narrated by Emma Gregory, and she does a brilliant job.
Yeah. So I've got a little feature that I'd like us to roll with today, which
Yes, new co-host. Go on.
thank you, Andy. Thank you. This lovely
Thank you.
lovely power that I have.
Indeed.
And I've called it nuns and nouns. And
None, ladies and gentlemen, none or noun.
None or
No,
noun.
it's
No,
not
it's
a
not
Vic
none or
Reeves
noun.
thing. No, it's
it's just a
nuns and nouns,
nuns and
right?
nouns, because just
Okay.
like you were saying, Nicky, as I was reading it, I was constantly stumbling over these words that I would go, I've absolutely no idea what these are, because I'm not a medieval historian. I'm a sociologist, so history starts in 1789, and then you just get on with it. So all these medieval words I had no idea about. I wasn't even reading it on Kindle, so I'd be kind of thumping text with my finger, and no kind of explanation would come up. So as you're reading it, you realise, well, this is part of how she's building this world, part of how she's immersing you and immersing herself in it. But I started to pick out my favourite nouns. So I've asked the good folks here to choose some of their favourite nouns that they found in the book. And I think we shall start with Tanya. Tell me your favourite noun.
Let's hear your 3 favourite nouns.
Do all 3, or do you want me just to do one now?
Oh no!
No.
You're right. We should string these out for a whole show. No, let's hear your 3. Let's hear your 3.
My 3 are Corrodian.
Oh, that was one of mine.
What does Corrodian mean?
It's a well-to-do layperson living in a monastery or nunnery, paying for their own food and accommodation for the rest of their lives.
That is a useful word to
Yeah,
have, though.
it's like
now.
the
Corrodian.
residents in the hotel at Faulty Towers was the way I was thinking
Yeah.
about it.
Yes,
Yeah.
Miss Tibbs.
Yeah.
Miss Gatsby and Miss
And
Tibbs.
the major.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. Corrodians all. Brilliant. Yes, thank you, Tanya.
Crockett.
Oh.
So this is an interesting one. So at the time the novel is set,
This is gold, McCormack. Absolute gold.
at the time the novel is set, it was used to mean a curl or roll of hair. But in this novel, it's actually used in its later sense, which is a small ornament placed on the inclined sides of a pinnacle, pediment, or canopy in Gothic architecture.
Oh.
But that usage only came in from 1677.
Who knew that we needed a word for that?
Watch out, Susie Dent. Don't get complacent because we've got people coming for you.
Do you think that Sylvia Townsend Warner like, what research would she have had to do to get all of these words? Because they are, it's littered with them. The whole thing is littered with these, as you said, medieval words. What would she have done when she wrote this?
Also,
in the
He wrote it in the
30s and
war.
1940s.
Yeah.
1940s.
She didn't have the
There was-
internet.
Nicky, I was just about to say there was no internet.
There was no internet.
There weren't
And
no-
she's
one TV
writing during the
channel.
war.
Yeah.
So what's she doing? Is she going to her local churchyard and like picking this stuff up?
I
Like,
think
what's she doing?
she was a London Library member, so maybe
she?
Mm-hmm.
she was using things from there. I don't know.
Her father was a teacher at Harrow, wasn't he? And I think he was a historian. I don't know if he was a medievalist. But actually, I think she just had one of those minds. I think that she just accumulated information and knowledge, and that she would file a word away, and then it would come back. She's a poet as well, isn't she? So I think there's a pleasure
Yes.
in word and sound and what's behind that word.
Tanya, what was your third?
My
nun noun?
third, I'll go for verderer, which is a judicial officer of the King's Forest.
Do you reckon?
Oh, that's really good.
Do you reckon we still have those? Because some of these words, you think, I bet these roles still exist. Somewhere's on someone somewhere will be on 40 guineas still doing that job, I reckon.
There's actually a job app available on gov.uk for a verderer
There you
right
go.
now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Don't mess around.
In the New
Wow.
Forest. That could be used.
Yep. That tells you everything you need to know
Wow.
about this country, both good and bad, I think.
And also the level of, research that she did. She wasn't just making this stuff up.
No.
well, I would like to. I'd just like to read a little bit, which stood out to me on the third reading, because you were saying how, Nicky, you were saying, and Tanya also, that you weren't sure what was going on for the first 100 pages, which I think is perfectly reasonable, and presumably part of what Sylvia Townsend Warner wanted to achieve, which is you're not quite sure whose story you're reading, or if you're reading something about the history of religion in that period. And then I was going through this again a few days ago, and I found on page 7 a paragraph that occurred to me would never stand out to you on your first or second reading, but perhaps after a few readings, you go, oh, wait a minute. I think this is the whole book being presented, slid across the table to you if you are wily enough to spot it. So she writes, a good convent should have no history. Its life is hid with Christ who is above. History is of the world, costly and deadly, and the events it records are usually deplorable. The year when the roof caught fire, the year of the summer flood which swept away the haystacks and drowned the bailiff, the year when the cattle were stolen, the year when the king laid the great impost for the Scotch wars, and timber for 5 years had to be felled to pay it, the year of the pestilence, the year when Dame Dionysia had a baby by the bishop's clerk. Yet the events of history carry a certain exhilaration with them. Decisions are made, money is spent, strangers arrive, familiar characters appear in a new light, transfigured with unexpected goodness or badness. Few calamities fall on a religious house which are not at some time or other looked back upon with wistful regret. In such an out-of-the-way place as this, anything might happen, said the first sacrist of Oby, staring at the listless horizon towards which the sun was descending like a lump of red-hot iron. Anything or nothing, replied the first prioress. That's what that book's about, isn't it? It's laid out almost like a pitch or a mission statement. Not that we would call it that
I would
way.
say, more specifically a manifesto. I think, this isn't great men of history. I think,
and also that sense that the artificiality of history. History demands that we log the significant events, thereby sacrificing 95% of the detail. And Nicky, you asked me about the research, or you asked us about the research. I think part of the purpose of the novel is to give back detail to the reader, to the lives of these people who were not intimately bound up in historical events. They just sort of might have accidentally seen them from a distance or passed through them. Does that sound plausible?
I think it's really interesting how they treat the major historical incidents that are going on at that time, or even the kind of what you might think of as the major incidents in the book. Like, there is a murder in the book, and that's just kind of a minor thing in comparison to some of the absolute minutiae. So I know that Sylvia Townsend Warner had said that she actually didn't think it was a historical novel. She wrote it as a kind of an anti-historical novel in that sense.
And it's very
yes.
Everything is very present, isn't it? You're not you're always in the moment, the immediate experience of what's happening to these people. It's not a kind of it's a meditative book, and it can sort of touch on the universal, but it's also it's just very grounded in the moment and the immediate sensation and experience. I think that's where all the nouns come from, I suspect.
I will, before we do another round of nuns or nouns, nuns and nouns, I'll just read. I've got an actual first edition here out of the library.
Oh, look at that. That's beautiful.
There's some crockets on that cover.
She's not wrong, listeners. I'll read the blurb on the inside front cover.
It's from 1948.
Yeah, I love the idea that somebody in the Chatto and Windus marketing department, crawling through the ruins of bombed out London during a paper shortage, had to think of a way of selling this novel. But this is what they came up with. Here we go. Planned on a generous scale. I'm going to stop immediately because that made me weep with laughter the first time I read it. If Sylvia Townsend Warner didn't write that herself, I'll eat my hat, my wimple. Planned on a generous scale, this novel presents the chronicles of Oby, a Benedictine convent in eastern England during the latter part of the 14th century, the age of Chaucer. It was a time when to become a nun was often a business transaction rather than a spiritual vocation. And Miss Townsend Warner describes with rich detail and verisimilitude, and with glances of discreet irony, the more worldly side of conventual life. Can we just say even the blurb has a great word on it? Conventual.
Yeah.
Conventual life. An outbreak of the Black Death, the fall of the convent spire, the bishop's visitation, a nun running away. Such incidents break with dramatic violence upon the community, but are soon woven into the quiet tapestry of its life, together with the everyday squabbles, ambitions, jealousies, boredoms, and pleasures. Miss Townsend Warner has brought all her powers to bear upon giving us a picture of a community. The nuns, the novices, the successive prioresses, the nun's priest, Sir Ralph, all are treated primarily as members of a community, individuals whom the intense ingrown communal habit moulds to a pattern. Unaided by sensationalism or any unaided by sensationalism or any spurious devices, the author has carried through a work of sustained historical imagination so convincing that we might almost be reading a contemporary chronicle.
Yeah. Although,
I think that's... Do you know what? I think that's a brilliant blurb. I would buy that book if I were... In the unlikely event anyone would write a blurb like that now.
Although, as Tanya says, it's actually full of sensationalism, isn't it? Murders, illegitimate children, theft, crumbling architecture. It's full of incident, but it's all turned into this flow of life happening on a daily basis. Oh, we said...
Una, there is a dramatic irony, isn't there, as well, running through the whole novel?
Yes, to do with the... to do with the priest. Yeah.
Yeah, well, she says it herself on like page 5
Pretty
or
much,
something.
yeah.
So
The priest isn't a priest, so they're all living in a state of mortal sin. They're all heading straight to hell because their priest is burying them. He's hearing their confessions. He's shriving them. That's another great word. But every sacrament they take is being given by someone who's never taken holy orders. They're all, they're all damned.
But so there's dramatic irony at work in a novel supposedly with no plot, but there's also, as you've just suggested, while saying this is a novel with no plot, it is full of incident. As you say, there's all sorts of dramatic. There's the plague, and there's murder, and there's fires, and there's collapsing buildings. But one of the reasons I love the novel so much is they're almost included in an insolent way. It's almost like saying to the reader, "Oh, you want a bit of plot, do you? Yeah, here's a bit. I'll throw you a chunk of plot. There we go. Feed on that for a few bits while I write the thing I want to write."
Do you think why
wonderful.
It's considered to be, as you said, lots of things happen in it, but people say there's no plot because there's the characters. They don't always happen to the same characters. The characters evolve and they move on, and there's new people come and new things happen to new characters. Do you think that's what it is? Because it's hard to get a handle on it. It's not just all about Sir Ralph, the priest. It's not just all about Ursula, or it's not just, it's about different characters who come and go throughout the book.
Conventionally, I think you would expect some payoff for, does Ralph get a comeuppance, or has he found out? And there are moments where they've heard rumours that he's not a priest. But they kind of, it's just people gossiping, or somebody's playing a bit of politics or anything. That it happens to be true doesn't seem relevant to how things unfold. Whereas in a novel that you are kind of planning or plotting conventionally, not conventionally, you would say there'd be a payoff or an irony worked out.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. The irony is just one amongst many ironies that happen in this book. It's one of the particularly funniest ones, I think. I think the book is maybe the word that's key to it is polyphony and polyphonic. I think it sort of builds this set of voices up, some of which come in and out, and we hear their song for a bit, and then they drift away, and we might not hear their notes as they fall away.
I also think, we said in the introduction that she saw it as a novel written on a sound Marxist foundation, which perhaps our instinctive response is to think it must be terribly dry, therefore. But of course, it's one of the things that's wrong foots you is it's very funny. I found it repeatedly hilarious, and both in terms of events described and the way in which they were described. The prose style is constantly wonderful in terms of finding the right funny word wherever. But also, because it's a Marxist novel, it is engaged with subverting what you would find in a bourgeois novel. So Nicky, like the idea that character is the thing and emotional inner life is what leads a bourgeois novel. A Marxist will say, no, that's all propaganda. Here is a novel whose lead character is a community within a building. And therefore, the internal colours are not available. You need to rethink what you expect from a novel.
It's interesting that the bishop kind of criticises them for having personal possessions and not taking due care of the convent's possessions, as if that's like you're not being sufficiently Marxist within this community. And then there's the bit with the peasants when the altar cloth gets stolen, and those people are saying, well, you're not actually looking after the poor, so are they really fulfilling a kind of a Marxist role?
Mission,
yeah.
And it's concerned with the economics of the situation, like down to the detail.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, I think it's self-consciously saying, look, what's interesting about history is not the great men. It's not the kings. I think they refer to the young king at the end, don't they? It's not all that detail. What history is about is the ebb and flow of human interaction. I think it's actually an anarchist novel. I think her head is Marxist. I think her heart is with the sort of bubbling up of human life and human freedom and human failure. It's a mischievous novel.
Also, an anarchist novel in terms of its use of language, right? Because the Marxism, in terms of the principle of the thing, is one thing, but the manner in which it's expressed is probably quite bourgeois. She has access to a vocabulary which is perhaps not going to appeal to someone in the shipyards of the Clyde, like, say, Robert Tressel and the Ragged Trouser Philanthropists. It's not that kind of Marxist novel. But also, I would like to say, in that blurb, if it was Sylvia who wrote this, which, let's be honest, it probably was, the author has carried through a work of sustained historical imagination so convincing that we might almost be reading a contemporary chronicle. I think that's the Easter egg there.
That's good.
Tanya, I think this is also a novel about women during the Second World War,
Yeah.
just after the war has ended.
Well, she was in the WVS, wasn't she? So she was, and she was involved in maintaining the day books or something. So that was literally lists of kind of minutiae of things that had happened in the war, and this kind of striving to make things last when they weren't going to last very long, which is again akin to what the nuns are doing. I definitely think it does come across as being written at that time, definitely.
So I'm going to take a break now, but when we come back, another round of eagerly anticipated nuns and nouns, and we're also going to be hearing from some actual nuns.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
Have you ever spotted McDonald's hot, crispy fries right as they're being scooped into the carton? And time just stands still. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Welcome back, everybody. We're talking about Sylvia Townsend Warner's novel, The Corner That Held Them, which is set in a 14th century convent / nunnery in East Anglia. And what you just heard there was recorded 100 years ago. 20 years, in fact, at least, before Sylvia Townsend Warner wrote The Corner That Held Them. And that is some nuns singing in Notre Dame, Reims, the Cathedral of Reims in France, and it was available on a French 78 RPM disc. Thank you, the internet, for providing that for us. Una, do you know what they were singing there?
I think it's a motet, isn't it? But I think the composer is of sort of relevance to the book. Guillaume de Marchaux. Now, I'm not going to pretend I know anything about this other than what I ginned up as I was reading this, but there was a moment in the book that I'm going to read in a moment. I thought, oh, there's something going on here. Townsend Warner she was originally a musicologist. She sort of composed in her youth. And she did the sort of first stage of her career, she's editing Tudor church music. So she was very well informed about music. And there's a scene in the book where some singing happens. What I kind of discovered as I sort of delved into this was that along with the sort of plagues and the peasants' revolts, there's a major change happening in choral music. And it's called Ars Nova, the new art.
Right, yes.
That's happening around the back of the book. So I've picked out a little section where somebody hears this music for the first time, and it's a character called Henry Yellowlees, and basically he's there to do the bishop's dirty work. He's sort of travelling around trying to sort out the mess of the finances.
I can hear Susanna's influence all over that.
Yeah. The Custos, yeah.
Another good noun.
Excellent noun.
Well, hold on, she's had 4. That's not fair.
And she nicked one of mine, so it's
I
outrageous.
know. Tanya Kirk doesn't fight fair.
I know. When it comes to nouns. So I picked out this little bit of Henry where he has this beautiful moment, and he's talking to a chaplain, and the chaplain summons in a local leper to do some singing with them. So here we go. Shuffling footsteps approached. The leper came in. In the dusk of the doorway, he seemed to glimmer like bad fish. He stank, too. He stationed himself at the further end of the room, and it was clear that he knew his place, as a dog does. There he stood, rubbing his scaly hands together, drawing preparatory breaths. His expression was professionally calm. Now, John, the Mashal Kyrie. The 3 voices sprang into the air. If Trist Loisir had seemed a foretaste of paradise, the Kyrie was paradise itself. This was how the blessed might sing, singing in a duple measure that ran as nimbly on its 4 feet as a weasel running through a meadow, with each voice in turn enkindling the others, so that the music flowed on and was continually renewed. And as paradise is made for man, this music seemed made for man's singing, not for edification, or the working out of an argument, or the display of skill, but only for ease and pleasure, as in paradise, where the abolition of sin begets a pagan carelessness, where the certainty of Christ's countenance frees men's souls from the obligations of Christian behaviour, the creaking counterpoint of God's law and man's obedience. It ended. Henry Yellowlees raised his eyes from the music book. The rays of the levelling sun had shifted while they sang and now shone full on the leper. His face, his high bald head, was scarlet. He seemed to be on fire. Again! Let us sing it again. I told you so, said the chaplain. I tell you, there has never been such music in the world before.
Wow, thank you so much.
There's some music writing for you, I think, Andy.
You know what? I could actually, this will sound absurd, but you've almost moved me to tears reading that, because one of the things I want to say about this book is it's a very rare thing for me to be able to remember what the joy of reading in childhood was like. But when I read this book, that's how I feel. Now, I wouldn't have read this book in childhood and experienced that, but now I do. The perfection of it could move me to tears. As a youth, I used to weep in front of butcher's shops and all that. But nevertheless, this is so beautiful.
Is it the language, or what is it, Andy, about it?
Okay. It's the mixture of ambition, language, and success. Imagine, Nicky, when I sit down to write an inventory and I have a piece of music that I want to try and drill down into the essence of it and communicate it to readers in such a way that they don't notice that's what I'm doing because it's so well written. And I'm not saying I ever achieved that. But to read somebody else doing it, not because it's music, just like, you don't have to ask me about nuns and nouns, Una, because one of my answers was a cheat, and it was a couple of sentences where no one noun stands out, but what tumbles past your eyes is a succession of perfect choices. Again, I'll read it you, and I think you'll see what I mean. Just listen to this. I might slow down a bit just to land happily on various words. As a house builded upon sand is liable to be inhabited by imps, apes, and serpents, the house of Obi was full of pride, sloth, greed, falsehoods, worldliness, pet animals, and private property. His grieving eyes had beheld spiced meats, soft cushions, perfumed and flowing mantles, better befitting harlots than the brides of Christ, whose joy it should be to feed on roots and wear narrow garments. Instead of the silence of the tomb, which to the ear of religion is music, his hearing had been tormented by the yelpings of little dogs and the clattering of egg whisks.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of my favourite
Tanya,
bits.
you were talking about, apart from anything else, apart from the constituent bits of that sentence, that's a very Townsend Warner-ish device, isn't it? The lists, the beautiful lists.
Yeah, she's amazing at lists. So the other one that I really love is she kind of sketches in the character of the new bishop who comes in right at the end in a list which has the perfect ending. So the new bishop was Perkin de Cray, a Fleming of a great money-lending family who was said to be a fat, smooth, proud man with a stammer, caring only for Our Lady, works of art, ritual, and foreign cheeses.
Can I just say as well, a fat
it's so perfect.
Fat, smooth man. Who would ever come up with three such simple words and make them work together so brilliantly?
Yep.
I think we should hear, Una, I think you should direct nuns and nouns towards our producer, Nicky Birch.
Yeah,
now,
Nicky, let's have some nouns from you. I mean, you're not going to better imps, apes, and serpents as a triad, are you?
No, I've got one actually that I really liked. You probably know this already, but I'd never heard of the word napery before. Do you know what napery means?
No, I've no idea.
Okay, good. That makes me feel less stupid. Household linen, especially tablecloths and napkins. Napery.
Oh.
Yeah.
Who knew? I liked cellaress.
Oh, I liked cellaress too. Yes, I had that.
As the name of a job which you understand what it is without knowing what it is, cellaress. I really liked indecorum. Not indecorous or decorum, but the state of indecorum. I thought, well, you rarely... Also, Martinmas. I don't actually know what Martinmas is. Does anybody know?
Quickly Googles Martin Mass. Hold on.
No.
It's a day. Tuesday, the 11th of November.
Martinmas.
Historically called Old Halloween.
Well, there you go.
We are educating, entertaining and informing one another like crazy on this show today.
Also, for our Scottish University fellows, it's the first and full term of the academic year.
Well, so Nicky, let me ask, you said a thing then which I'm sad to hear you say, that we don't want to make you feel stupid, we want to make you feel enlightened, right? Did you enjoy this or not? Be honest. Speak up.
No,
Let's
I did.
hear.
I did enjoy it. I like the fact that I could probably come and go to it. You know, I could miss out bits and it's still okay and still had me. Yeah. But no, I did enjoy it. I think there was a phrase used there, the historical imagination. And that's what's so good about it. Because this is set in the medieval time,
time of Chaucer.
Thank you. And yet the sort of constructed detail about their day-to-day life, about discussions. Does your nunnery not have a moat? Oh, how do you survive without a moat? Says the one nunnery to, one nun to another. And, things like that. It must be terribly damp. Yes. And I love that. And, she does such a good job of putting you the small, petty detail, what life was like in the medieval times for nuns, where one of the great sort of story arcs, if there is indeed, is about wanting to build a spire, right? Do you remember the name of the nun who wants to build a spire? The prioress?
Go on.
Prioress Alicia. I think Alicia de Foley. She has this big vision to build a spire in the nunnery, and it all collapses and goes. They rebuild it, and it's her sort of life's work. And once it's built, she steps down. There's this sort of long arc and her obsession with it, and it got me thinking. I was thinking, well, if people weren't obsessed by these things, how were they ever built? How did things get built?
Yeah.
Because it was so difficult to make these complex things. And how do we have medieval churches? So we must have had people.
It took hundreds of years.
Yeah, and would have taken a really long time. Yeah. So that level of detail and kind of minutiae and pettiness, it really does put you in that time in a way that I've not experienced before. So I really enjoyed it.
Also, Nicky, done, can we just repeat, done with wit and humour.
Yes.
This is a significantly funnier book than William Golding's novel, The Spire.
Yes.
About the same thing. There's more laughs in this.
Oh, it is very funny. Yeah. It's very funny. And the characterizations are funny, and the nuns are quite kind of, catty about each other.
Oh, Tanya, would you be kind enough? I know you've got the bit with the bee. Could you read us the bit with the bee, please?
Yeah. To preface this, they're all thinking about who the next bishop is going to be. So you need to know that because it makes sense for this. So Obi continued to speculate until the eve of Palm Sunday. The nuns were out gathering willow palm. It was a sudden hot day, as hot as summer. Bees were lolling from one golden tuft to another and followed the cut boughs into the chapel. Light-headed from the conjunction of Lenten abstinence and this luxurious weather, the nuns were frisking about and pretending to beat each other with the willow boughs when a messenger rode up amongst them. Where was the prioress? There was the prioress, trying to put a bee down Dame Philippa's neck. But she came up with her usual sturdy dignity to receive the letter. The new bishop was Walter Dumford, who greeted his beloved daughters and begged for their prayers.
Sturdy, what was it?
Her sturdy dignity.
You've all read Lolly Willowes, have you?
Yeah.
How did this compare to Lolly Willowes for you? Given that, I should also say, if you'd like to hear what everybody felt about Lolly Willowes 10 years ago, and indeed, I think, Nicky, you went back and listened to that show, and there's lots of biographical detail about Sylvia Townsend Warner in that show, isn't there? We haven't really done it here, but
yeah, there is.
So, were you minded to, listeners? You could travel back in time yourselves to London in the winter of 2016 to hear more about Sylvia Townsend Warner. But may I just ask our panel here, how does this compare with Lolly Willowes? After all, it's written. It's written, to be fair, only 20 years later. Which in career terms isn't really that much.
They are intriguingly different, and as I understand it, I haven't read any of her other novels, but I think they're all quite different.
They're remarkably different from one another. Yeah,
it's the kind of turns of phrases that make you realise it's by the same person. So it's completely different kind of setting, storyline. Setting's very important to both of them, though, I guess, in its own way. Lolly Willowes has also got humour in it.
There's the unexpected, though, that's right.
I wouldn't be surprised that they're by the same person.
She has, I would say, an Elizabeth Taylor-ish ability to surprise you with what a character does, while at the same time, once the thing they do, you totally buy it. You see, yes, that's what people do. Una, how did you feel this compared to Lolly Willowes?
Very, very different books. But I think there's this playfulness, this mischief, this impishness, maybe these, a focus on women who are surplus to requirements, but still their lives are worth not just narrating, but absorbing and being with and taking on board. They are worthy of being the subject of literature. I loved that about this book, that these women's lives matter. They mattered.
And why shouldn't we record, not just the great men of history, but everybody else.
Exactly.
There's a guiding intelligence. That's what I would say in every one of her novels.
Yeah.
Of course there is. But
there's a lovely sketch that a verbal sketch, written sketch that a friend of Townsend Warner makes of her. It's an American poet called Jean Starr Untermeyer. And she's describing Townsend Warner in her diaries. And I just think it captures everything about, I think, that intelligence, but also why this book works. So she writes about her. She is so alive that her vital awareness is translated into everything she thinks and does. She can make an event of the fact that the carrots have come up large and healthy in her garden. A casual stroll on the lookout for mushrooms becomes a kind of picnic. A passing remark on one's appearance is, by an affectionate inflection, almost a caress. Sylvia is all in one piece. Everything has been assimilated. Music and learning and country law and wit. And her letters flow spontaneously into form, like her conversation. And I think your question, Nicky, earlier about where was all this learning? I think she just hoovered it up. Her mind was just full of this. And then it bubbles up on the page and describes music or people or change. Yeah.
I have a question for Andy. Andy, this is your favourite of hers, correct? This is
yes.
is the one.
One of my favourite historical novels as well, in fact, which I'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah, I suppose I want to know just genuinely, why this one? Why do you love it so much? What is it about this book above her other books that you think really works here?
All right, that is a good question. Can I put that in briefly in just some kind of context, because I think it's relevant, and I'll pick this up in a sec. I have a quote here from Colin Richmond, who was writing in the TLS, and Colin Richmond was a noted and important historian. And this is what he wrote about The Corner That Held Them. He said, "Every historian has a favourite historical novel. Mine is Sylvia Townsend Warner's The Corner That Held Them, a chronicle of a nunnery in Lincolnshire," well, it's not Lincolnshire, it's East Anglia, "between the 1340s and the 1380s. The book's chief strength lies in the fact that historians know nothing about life in medieval English nunneries. It has other strengths: no main protagonist, no plot, no historical personages. It is also good on economics, which rarely feature in historical novels. Sylvia Townsend Warner was a writer with strong Marxist-Leninist principles. She had closely observed the WVS in wartime Dorchester. Her deeply felt novel took 6 years to write and was published in 1948. And here's the crucial sentence, if you want to know what life in a small, obscure 14th century nunnery might have been like, it is the book to read." Now that, for me, is why I think it's one of the most interesting of her books and one of my favourite historical novels. And in that respect, it has something in common with a couple of my other favourite historical novels, which are Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall trilogy and Penelope Fitzgerald's The Beginning of Spring. They are novels. These are novels, and they use the unknown to create space and magic and fiction, which isn't a Patrick O'Brian style pseudo-authentic log of historical terms and attention to detail, because when it comes down to it, we can't do that. What we can do, however, is use fiction to bring something to life in a way that works as fiction. I think with The Beginning of Spring by Penelope Fitzgerald, the thing I love so much about that novel is massively important historical events are happening just off stage or are about to happen, which the reader will be aware of, but no one in the novel is. What I love about Hilary Mantel's books is, unless you are one of those people, unless you are a specialist on the politics of the reign of Henry VIII, you know only what the characters know. Okay, and so you are kind of, certainly in the first volume, not really sure what's going on. I think what the unique quality of The Corner That Held Them is, and in this sense, Nicky, therefore is the most enjoyable of what Sylvia Townsend Warner was good at, is she's like she's got a toy box full of things to do with nuns and life in that century, and the pleasure she is taking in rummaging through it and showing you things and captivating you with her enthusiasm for what she's doing. It's a writer who knows they're good, being brilliant, but not bashing you over the head with it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Good.
Have you got any nouns?
Another noun? No, but I have got a quiz.
I've got my nouns.
Oh,
Nobody's
Una's got your
my
nouns. Go on.
yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I liked Harriet, which is the one that got me here. Yeah, and that's a death duty. It's the right of a feudal lord to reclaim a serf's best beast or piece of equipment in the event of the
Best
serf's
beast.
death. That's a really best beast.
That
Oh,
was on my
that's
list
a great
as
one,
well.
isn't it?
So good.
And
Yeah.
to my disappointment, it was not the inspiration for James Herriot. I think that's a footballer or
No.
something. And then the other one, I suspect this is one that people will know, but it's not the kind of thing I know because we didn't have animals in Merseyside when I was growing up.
There are none.
There are none. Yeah,
There's still none.
It's Tiercel, which I suspect there are people who already know that this is the word for a male falcon used in falconry, and so that'll come in handy in my life.
Nicky's checking the RSPB website right now to see if to see if there's a job going for a Tiercel wrangler.
Yeah. I was at a Cambridge dinner the other night in Hull, and the local raptor charity come and they bring owls. So we had some owls flying overhead.
What a life you lead. That could be in the book.
It could be in the book, couldn't it? There I was sitting, and the owls were flitting around the rafters.
Well, Una, you were saying something about to me the other day, which I've thought about a lot, where the comparison in this novel is not to ecclesiastical novels, is it? It's to novels about communities of women.
Exactly, yeah. Of which nun novels are a subset, I think.
So give me some examples, please.
Oh, right. Well, I've been rereading for a little essay I'm writing. I've been reading Ursula Le Guin's Tombs of Atuan.
Yeah.
But also I was thinking of things like Gaudy Night and the...
which we did on this, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The women there. And then one of my favourite books of the last, I'd like to say 10 years, but who knows when it was published. It's a book called Cwen, C-W-E-N by Alice Albinia. And it's a contemporary novel about a little all-women community off the northeast coast. And the founder goes missing, and then the plot ensues. But there's a lovely quote in Corner That Held Them about all women communities. Men fight like so many stags, thought Dame Isabel, and to live with them perpetually would be intolerable. But from time to time, a male quarrel is refreshing, like hartshorn or catnip.
That's right. They have a fight, don't they? The bishop and the so-called priest have a fight.
It's so good.
And then and then basically he gets lamped, doesn't he? They have an actual fight.
He does.
And then they say, it's just a moment of madness, and that was it.
I will throw into the pot here as well. It's very much darker than this novel. Miriam Tave's Women Talking, which came out about 5 years ago. Tanya, are there any novels that you could think of that fit the bill here?
The collectives of women.
Has your mind gone blank?
Well, I was really thrown by how many times in the Corner That Held Them, the nuns get compared to women in a brothel.
Yeah,
it's many times. There's kind of repeated metaphors that are used for them, and one is a brothel. Bees come up again and again, and the other one is there's a quite interesting description of the nuns as bums on a tray.
Yes, that's a great one.
That's right.
I guess the the bees are all busy doing work that doing busy work and mate work and rushing around and that have no kind of individual purpose. Yeah.
Perhaps Sylvia Townsend Warner felt a brothel was the closest female-staffed economic institution to a nunnery in a dark mirror version of a nunnery.
Women being the kind of managers of the institution.
Yeah. Okay, so listen, we're going to have to go in a minute, but fortunately, before we go, I have a quiz for my dear friends here today. Okay, so we're going to play a little game called Obi or Nonberg. Obi, as we've discussed, is the name of the nunnery in the corner that held them. And as everybody knows, Nonberg is the name of the abbey in The Sound of Music. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give everybody, one at a time, I'm going to give people the name of one of the nuns from the corner that held them, or one of the nuns from The Sound of Music, and they have to identify which book, film, or stage musical they come from. What a shame, incidentally, can I just say, as far as I know, there is no stage musical yet of The Corner That Held Them, but that would be magnificent.
It's coming.
A Marxist stage musical about nuns.
Whose back catalogue will it be?
It's a jukebox musical. Amazing.
Beyonce, Convent Carter.
That's right.
Oh, beautiful.
Nice.
Right,
Thank
okay,
you.
here we go. I'm going to start with you, Tanya. And as you're our guest, you can have this one. Is it Obi or Nonberg? Sister Maria.
Nonberg. But is that a trick question? Because Maria doesn't become a nun. She's only a... she's Fraulein Maria.
All right.
She's a postulant.
Okay, you're right. I have misunderstood.
She climbs every mountain.
She does.
Yeah.
I have misunderstood The Sound of Music.
She has a little
Imagine my
relationship,
shame.
doesn't she?
She does.
She chooses Christopher Plummer over Jesus, doesn't she? You're quite right.
As indeed we all would.
Yes. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, Tanya, of course you get that one. Thank you very much. Let's turn to my co-host, Una. Sister Berta, Nonberg or Obi?
Oh, it's Nonberg.
No. It's... Oh, yes, it is Nonberg. Sorry, I do apologise. Oh, the tension in the room. Yes,
someone bring in Richard Osman.
Sound of Music. Nicky. Sister Matilda.
Oh,
Nonberg or Obi?
Obi.
Yes, you are right. It is Obi. It is the corner that held them. Tanya. Sister Isabel. Nonberg or Obi?
Sister Isabel?
Don't help her, you two.
Obi.
It is Obi.
It is Obi,
Isabel
yes.
and Isabella. Know that.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. Let's try Una again for this one. It's Sister Sophia, Obi or Nonberg?
Sister Sophia. Oh, that's Notre Dame High School, St Helens. No, that's that I think is. Oh, I'm not sure actually. I think that's Obi.
It's Nonberg.
Oh, which one is she?
How do you solve a problem like Una?
Oh.
Yes, it's Nonberg. Sound of Music. Which one's she? She's one of the 4 or 3 nuns in The Sound of Music. There's
Well,
not
they weren't
loads.
all nuns, were they? Because
No.
Yeah.
One is the yes, I know. One is the Mother Superior. Yes, I know.
Novice. That's the word I was looking
Novice.
for. She was a
Novice.
novice.
And finally, Nicky, Sister Blanche, Obi or Nonberg?
Oh my God. I'm going to say Nonberg.
I'm so sorry, it's Obi.
Oh, Blanche.
You've lost £1 million.
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
None shall pass.
None shall pass here.
Very
That's it.
good.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you very much.
Listen, we probably ought to finish now before everyone starts singing and we have to pay some kind of fee. Shall I go straight into this now?
Yeah. The rest of us are just novices. You're the professional.
Oh. And that's where we must leave it. Thanks to Tanya for granting us sanctuary in the precincts of the convent. and to our producer, Nicky Birch, for being our own Mother Superior.
If you want show notes with clips, links and suggestions for further reading for this show and the previous 241 episodes, please visit our website at backlisted.fm. And if you want to buy the books discussed on this or any of our other shows, visit our shop at bookshop.org and choose Backlisted as your bookshop.
Yeah, and you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/backlisted. Remember, if you subscribe at the lock listener level, you get 2 extra exclusive podcasts every month, plus installments of Andy's new writing project, Inventory, which is fantastic, and the chance to join a community of dedicated listeners and readers like ourselves.
But before we go, Tanya, is there any last thing you'd like to say about the corner that held them that we didn't manage to get to in the podcast?
I wanted to ask you about the title. What do you think? Is there some reference in the title that I'm not aware of? Is it just that the title, the corner, is Obi? Is it about the corner of the altar cloth that they've not finished? What's the significance? I thought about this a lot when I was reading it.
My edition has the source for that quotation.
Oh, great.
Right, okay. So it's from the Wisdom of Solomon.
Oh.
For neither might the corner that held them keep them from fear.
Wow.
There you go. Does that transform your understanding of the book? Have we got to go round again?
Yeah, scrap all of that.
This changes everything, Una.
Record scratch, yeah.
I think that is a fascinatingly, to me, but appropriately elliptical kind of title. Because it doesn't change, does it, Tanya, at all what you think? But what it does, in a sense, it doesn't matter what the corner is. What matters is life and death go on. You know, like whatever you choose to believe or disbelieve, you'll be prey to the same set of conditions as everyone else, unless they have a lot more money than you. What do you think, Una?
Well, yes, I mean, it seems to me that it is the convent. It is the place where they're sheltered throughout, plague, war, all the rest of it. But it doesn't give them complete protection from human nature.
Yes, complete protection from human nature. Well, there's a theme that never dies. Right, listen, I would like to say thank you so much to Tanya for coming on, for doing the work.
Thank you,
for
Tanya.
joining us, for being such a brilliant guest. I would like to thank my co-host Una McCormack for being a super professional. And I would like to thank Nicky Birch for using her new microphone so skillfully. Thank you, Nicky. Nicky, is there anything else you wish to add?
No, I'm really excited to say that we've got the next few shows lined up and they're all going to be brilliant. We're cracking on. We're not repeating this summer, are we? We're just going shows.
We do indeed have a really brilliant lineup all the way through now to September. I'm very excited about what we've got coming up. So, Una, any last message for humanity?
Read the book.
Yes. Please read this novel. It's not out of print. You can get it easily. It's hiding in plain sight on the shelves of your library or your bookshop. It is a masterpiece. And I don't just say that lightly. It really is. So thanks very much, everybody. Thanks for joining us. See you in a fortnight.
Bye.
Bye-bye.